Good afternoon. We had a technical glitch again. But then now we'll take over to the next presentation. Shifali will come after this presentation with the next topic of gender dysphoria. So I'll be basically talking about substance abuse issues in Punjab. And classically, we all know that they were marketed very nicely 3-4 years back with the name of Urta Punjab. And substance abuse issues ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਸਾਡੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, especially opioids ਦੇ. So a brief introduction about our hospital. So this hospital was basically established by Dr. Sarabjit in 1977. It's one of the oldest and pioneer institution in private psychiatry and drug de-addiction. It's a 30-bedded hospital recognized under Mental Health Act and State Substance Abuse Treatment Center. Ultra rapid opioid detoxification was started in 2002. And it was the only hospital to be personally visited by Dr. Wiesman. It's the first psychiatric hospital in the region to be accredited by NABH. We are impaneled with the ECHS, ESI and CGHS. And our sister concern is AS Rehabilitation Center, which is a 40-bedded psychiatric rehabilitation center situated in Jalandhar itself. We have a Neuray exclusive child guidance clinic, which is a branch of ANR. And shortly we are coming with a Neuray diagnostic, which will be providing diagnostic services to the people of Jalandhar. So the magnitude of the problem we'll be discussing globally, India and in Punjab. So opioids is first among the drugs responsible for mortality. It's a primary drug, 71.3% cases which come for medical attention or treatment. Estimated 27 million people suffered from opioid use disorders in 2016. Majority used illicitly cultivated or manufactured heroin. Effective treatment, although it is existent, but it is available to only less than 10% of the people. There is a dearth of epidemiological studies. Collective statistics on UNODC show that at the time of National Health Survey in 2001, India had 0.7% of adult population 15 years and above who were suffering from opioid use in comparison to 0.3 globally and in Asia. From DAMS, this is the Drug Abuse Monitoring Survey performer that all psychiatric hospitals generally use when they have patients with de-addiction. So opioids form 26% of all substance abuse cases. Punjab was reported highest among the states with use of opioids. The Punjab State Government report of 2015 says that about 2.3 lakh of opioid dependent are there, and 1,500 could be opioid users. So users and dependents, so that's very high number. Approximately we are crossing 10 lakh mark in that. So recent survey of 22 districts of Punjab found that people were primarily opioid dependent, 90.5% amongst the substance abuse users. So dependence on illicit opioids was common, 57.9, followed by non-injection opioids, that is 41.4, and injectable opioids, that is 24.9. Heroin inhaled or injected emerged as the commonest opioid, which was 52%. Natural opioids, which is Pukefene and Dode, were used by 27.4% and followed by prescription opioids, that is diphenoxylate. Lifetime other prescription opioids which were used were codeine containing cough syrups and dextropropoxyphene, although it has been banned but still available in the market, and Kamini, it is an Ayurvedic opium containing prescription, about 6.2%. So opioid dependence can be considered as a physical and a psychological problem. So after long-term opioids, what happens is the body stops producing the endogenous opioids. So the body completely becomes dependent on the exogenous opioids. So when we are trying to explain it to the layman, we generally say, see, endorphins are endogenous molecules. So endogenous hormones basically in the body are either in micrograms or nanograms. So when you start taking opioids, it's probably in grams. So you are resetting your receptors to a higher level of stimulation. So that is what the body needs to actually work. So initially the opioid receptors were basically found in the central nervous system, but now recently it has been found that opioid receptors are present all over the body in GIT, kidney, liver, and in the sympathetic ganglia. So we all know what the opioid receptors are: mu, kappa, delta. So mu is basically for analgesia, respiratory depression, meiosis. Kappa is for analgesia, sedation. Delta also has somewhat the similar mechanism of action. So it's basically, when we talk about opioids, we talk about endorphins, which are the endogenous opioids. If you break the word, it says endogenous morphine. So recent research has shown that downregulation of opioid receptors takes place when high level of agonists are present for a long period of time. When used regularly, heroin and other opioids result in physical dependence or neuroadaptation. In addition, other systemic receptors, opioids act as receptor sites within the brain. Dependency on exogenous opioids can be treated pharmacologically with the use of agonists. We use methadone, partial agonists such as buprenorphine, and naltrexone, which is the antagonist. So, WHO has recommendations for minimum care to be provided to the patients with opioid dependence. So, minimum care is essential pharmacological treatment options should at least consist of a opioid agonist maintenance and should be able to manage the opioid withdrawal. At minimum, this would include either methadone or buprenorphine or opioid agonist maintenance on an outpatient treatment. And the best possible is pharmacological treatment options should consist of both methadone and buprenorphine for opioid withdrawal and maintenance, and alpha-2 adrenergic agonist for opioid withdrawal and naltrexone for relapse prevention. So in India, the management is basically when you have an opioid user, so you do the assessment whether it's opioid intoxication or dependence. If it's an acute intoxication and patient is not maintaining vitals, then probably he would need an ICU or a tertiary care setup. The detoxification can be with the agonist, which is buprenorphine, methadone or clonidine. And for dependence, you need long-term pharmacotherapy. Use of it can be either done with agonist, that is buprenorphine, methadone, or antagonist, naltrexone. So we will talk about the details of naltrexone and treatment options in which naltrexone can be started. So agonist maintenance as recommended by the WHO, oral methadone and sublingual buprenorphine. So this basically comes in the harm reduction strategies. In people who are using IV heroin or using illicit street drugs. So what we are basically doing is we are basically giving the receptors an opioid agonist so that patient does not have withdrawal symptoms, does not have craving, and slowly patient can be shifted from illicit drugs to buprenorphine and methadone, which obviously have to be tapered over the period of time so that patient can get back to his endorphins. So like I said, harm reduction strategies are basically to reduce the risk of needle infections, reduce the risk of hepatitis C, HIV. So we have got good needle exchange program in the East India, outreach programs and peer education, drug substitution and agonist maintenance programs. Under NACO, for injectable drug users, opioid substitution therapy is intended to provide the following benefits. Reduction in the injection behavior and treatment of HIV, tuberculosis and viral hepatitis. So there is increased adherence, reduction in opioid use. This is the most important. Reduction in overdose related death, very high in the IV drug abusers. So and the sociological factors like reduction in the domestic violence, improved child care and family ties, and improve productivity. So when to start buprenorphine? Buprenorphine, ideally buprenorphine is a partial agonist. So what happens is most of the people when they go to a clinic for detoxification, they generally would have consumed some amount of drug. So and they take the medication and somehow they have a psychological bent towards having the drug again, or probably they'll just immediately take the tablet. So that will precipitate a withdrawal symptom because buprenorphine will replace the opioid from the receptor and it will start, the patient will start having withdrawal symptoms. So generally buprenorphine, whenever we are prescribing to any patient, we have to tell them that he should take the first dose when he starts having withdrawal symptoms. If he takes before that, so being a partial agonist, it will precipitate the withdrawal in the patient. So generally dose which is used is up to 8 milligrams, maximum of 32 milligram a day can be used. OST we know there's a Punjab government initiative of OST. We also call them as OAT clinics. So it has increased widely in the last 5 to 10 years, and there are about 30,000 recipients of OST. And till date, only 5% of the opioid dependent individuals are actually taking benefit of this treatment. So when we talk about detoxification, we are basically talking about use of alpha-2 adrenergic drugs like clonidine and treating the patient. In detoxification, we generally admit the patient and keep him inpatient for a couple of days. So that can be done as a a rapid detoxification, a slow detoxification, or an ultra rapid detoxification. So the idea is to withdraw the agonist, whether it's buprenorphine or methadone, or patient is on opioid receptor like drugs like tramadol, tapentadol. So the idea is to withdraw those and start the patient on naltrexone. So what are the benefits of inpatient detoxification? So inpatient detoxification, they generally say that has a better rate of completion than outpatient detoxification. However, there is no demonstrable difference in relapse rate. And inpatient detoxification is good for people who have previously failed to complete outpatient detoxification, have had complications during opioid withdrawal, have insufficient social support, have comorbid medical or psychiatric condition. Antagonist treatment for opioid dependent patients not commencing opioid agonist maintenance treatment, antagonist pharmacotherapy using naltrexone should be considered following the completion of opioid withdrawal. So the maintenance on antagonist is good for criteria for suitability is young patients, smaller duration of opioid use, employed individuals who are facing professional problems, strong motivation and good social support. And there are a couple of tests which are required before that, and a naloxone challenge test, and then probably we can start naltrexone. So this is basically talking about the benefits of opioid agonist treatment versus the antagonist treatment. So a few people would say when we talk about the agonist treatment, we are basically replacing one opioid with another opioid. Although that's true, but then see, proper case selection is very important. Not each and every patient is meant for rehabilitation. Not each and every patient is good candidate for naltrexone. Not each and every patient will do well with buprenorphine. There are a few patients who would say that they have had really bad experience with buprenorphine, so they would not want to take buprenorphine. A few would say that they, when they were taking heroin, they were fine, but when they switched to methadone, they got dependent on methadone. And it's been a couple of years they have not been able to leave these prescription opioids. So patient selection is the key, and then only we can tailor make the treatment according to the patient needs. So use of agonists, is it becoming lesser of the two evils? So it's basically creating an iatrogenic dependence. We see a couple of cases who have been put on prescription opioid painkillers for knee pain or shoulder pain following some accident, and it's been years together that they have not tried to stop the prescription opioids, and they get dependent on those opioids. So fostering addiction by overuse of opioid agonist drugs, post-marketing surveillance survey of buprenorphine showed that 44.5%, nearly half of those maintained on therapeutic buprenorphine reported a sense of high if used in higher dose. So that means this drug does have opioid-induced addictive effects. Most worrying, generating a parallel market for these potentially addictive drugs by diversion of legally obtained buprenorphine. So we often read in the newspapers that some pharmacist or some chemist or probably some person who's not qualified to prescribe buprenorphine has been caught with high doses of prescription opioids. So this is something which is not part of the treatment, but yes, it does have a lot of social implications. So the crux is that neither the doctor nor the patient should take OST as a shortcut or easy way out to obtaining illicit drugs in illicit manner and living indefinitely in this manner. So what we will talk about today is the ultra-rapid opioid detoxification. So that's something that our hospital specializes in. So ultra-rapid and rapid detoxification methods that shorten the duration of detoxification and thereby also the duration of withdrawal symptoms. In both ultra-rapid and rapid detoxification, the withdrawal is precipitated at the start of detoxification by users high doses of opioid antagonist, which is naltrexone or naloxone. The essential distinction between ultra-rapid and rapid is the duration of detoxification and the level of sedation. So patient selection is dependence criteria should be met as per the ICD-10 criteria. He should be dependent on an opioid. Absolute contraindication for ultra-rapid is pregnancy or cocaine intoxication, and relative is comorbid other substance use. If he is using heavy amounts of alcohol or cannabis, so we would like to delay the treatment for a few days. And uncontrolled medical problems, too much of diabetes, hypertension, cardiac issues, ASA physical status 3 or more, active psychosis, or suicidal ideations. And it should not be done with people with fibromyalgias and chronic pain syndromes. So we need a baseline ECG, blood test, chest X-ray. If need, echocardiography and TMT is also required. And then you need a viral serology, and if need be, hormonal analysis for such patients. So a night prior to the procedure, the patient is kept fasting after midnight, and enema at the night before surgery may be useful because patients do have hypomotility during the procedure. So optimal setting of such a procedure is an intensive care unit. Prior to the procedure, the patient is given aspiration prophylaxis with a H2 receptor blocker or a proton pump inhibitor. The monitors should include ECG, pulse oximetry, non-invasive blood pressure measurement, and more invasive types of hemodynamic monitoring are usually not necessary. So induction of anesthesia and anticholinergic like glycopyrrolate is generally used to decrease the hypersecretion. Anesthesia induction is done with propofol. So patient is paralyzed with succinylcholine and intubated, and after that process he is allowed to spontaneously breathe on room air which is supplemented with oxygen. Patients are not generally paralyzed during the procedure. If need be, we do use a long-acting, non-depolarizing muscle relaxant, but in conjunction with a mechanical ventilation, but that's in very probably less than 1% of the cases. A urinary catheter and orogastric nasogastric tube is inserted, and withdrawal is precipitated by IV injection of high dose of naloxone, which is generally given by a syringe pump, and or you can also do an orogastric administration of naltrexone. So signs of withdrawal include your hypertension, systolic more than 140, tachycardia more than 90, tachypnea, and patient does have mydriasis, lacrimation, rhinorrhea, piloerection, and myoclonus during this. So in the preparation of emergence from anesthesia, the bladder catheter is first removed, the stomach is suctioned, and the gastric tube is removed. When the patient is awake, responsive, and protective reflexes are present, the trachea is extubated. In the hours following ultra-rapid, naltrexone 50 mg per oral is given, and daily naltrexone 50 mg per oral should be given for a period of 3 to 6 months. When the patient has been monitored for 24 hours, the symptoms of withdrawals are within acceptable limits. The patient meets the usual criteria for discharge from the recovery room to the outpatient facility and can be discharged. So this is just a flow chart of the procedure. Residual withdrawal symptoms like psychological withdrawals, drug craving, hyperactivity, muscle pain, bone pain, they might take about 2 to 3 weeks, but generally respond to non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. The question there has been a lot of questions of pulmonary edema with adrenergic crisis due to large amount of catecholamines in the past. However, overall the detoxification treatment is largely asymptomatic if done in a proper setup and patient selection is done nicely. So the normal problems, emesis, loose motion, they can be treated symptomatically, and you don't need to use a prescription opioid after the procedure. So I'll be sharing quickly our experience of inpatient opioid detoxification. So this was a retrospective study that we did, data from 2016 to 2018. 506 inpatients were treated for de-addiction, and a total of 345, that is 68.1%, had primary diagnosis of opioid dependence syndrome. About 125 patients, 36.2, were treated with ultra-rapid detoxification, and rest were treated by slow detoxification. So this is just the data of it. Mean age was 28, mean duration of months of use was 45.43. So different opioids which were used was IV heroin was the maximum, then inhalational, then natural opioid, prescription opioids, codeine, multiple illicit were there, and multiple including medical. So many patients who were using opioid, they did have a history of comorbid medical opioid use, because at times they do go to hospitals, try to take treatment on OPD basis. So they did have history of use of methadone, buprenorphine, Lomotil, codeine. So this is something important, comorbid among the slow withdrawal. So like I said, generally when we are doing ultra rapid, we when the patient has comorbid psychiatric issues like mania, depression, psychosis, we do not do the procedure. So we prefer slow withdrawal in that. So mania was seen as in about 8 patients, depression in 11, psychosis and personality disorder as well. With ANR, it's a contraindication to take such people with comorbid psychiatric disorders to take them for a procedure. And medical comorbidities, they were seropositive were 33, hypertension was 8, diabetes was 20, neurological including seizures in the past was 4. So these basically with all these comorbidities, patient generally goes into the selection criteria of a slow withdrawal rather than the ultra rapid opioid detoxification. So mean duration of stay minimum in slow withdrawal was 2 days. Obviously patients sometimes are not convinced for treatment, so they take LAMAs. And ANR, the mean duration was minimum duration was 2 and maximum duration was 5 days, and slow withdrawal sometimes the duration would exceed to up to 19 days. So there are a few things when we try to explain them about the procedure, so they generally are not willing because they don't want to undergo the anesthetic procedure. So the mean duration of procedure is 266 minutes, that is 4 hours and 26 minutes for the ANR procedure, and the pain score prior to procedure and 24 hour post procedure was noticed, and the mean was 2.71, and after 24 it was 24 hours of the treatment it was 0.94. So but natural, just after the procedure, any procedure, the pain score is a little high and it tends to settle down once your endorphins start building in. So this is an important slide where we had use of antagonists. When we are doing the procedure of ultra rapid, all cases were discharged on an antagonist. And when we are doing a procedure of slow withdrawal, so there were 43 patients who were discharged on agonist, 31 were not willing for antagonist, but yet 146 were discharged on naltrexone. So limitations of our work is basically it was a retrospective study, as follow-up data was not collected, so we lacked the estimates of relapse rates and compliance to antagonist eventually. So I would just conclude my presentation by that opioid crisis is very much there in the world, but then our state is much more affected because we've seen in the villages, we've seen in the cities, people do have a lot of opioid dependence. So yes, agonist treatment has stood the strength of time, but then probably due to iatrogenic dependence issues, we should look for other treatment modalities like detoxification and rehabilitation eventually, so that people are actually off opioids. So when you talk about opioids, you talk about natural opioids, synthetic and prescription opioids. So if the patient skips his dose of natural opioid and gets on to the prescription opioid, so somehow that by the back of the mind he also knows it's more or less the same thing. So considering the growth in psychiatry and tertiary care setups and collaboration with other specialties, ANR can be considered as a safe and effective method for detoxification if carried with proper precautions and expertise. Thank you.